When you think of angels, you probably imagine peaceful, radiant beings with halos and soft wings. But what if I told you the angels of ancient texts are nothing like that? Blazing wheels of fire, multi-eyed monstrosities, towering figures that inspire awe and terror. These aren't your cute, fluffy guardians, they're cosmic forces beyond human comprehension. So, why are angels so terrifying? And what did ancient people really believe about them? Let's uncover the truth behind these celestial nightmares. Beyond human comprehension. One of the most common ways divine or supernatural entities are described is through the metaphor of blinding light. In many religious texts, this brightness signifies purity, divinity, and the inability of mortals to fully grasp the essence of the being they encounter. For instance, in the Christian tradition, God is often associated with an unapproachable light. The Bible describes the presence of God as so intense that no human can see his face and live, Exodus 33 verse 20. Similarly, in the New Testament, the transfiguration of Jesus is accompanied by dazzling light, emphasizing his divine nature, Matthew 17 verse 2. In Hinduism, deities such as Krishna and Vishnu are often depicted as radiating an intense, supernatural glow. The Bhagavad Gita describes Krishna revealing his universal form to Arjuna, a vision so overwhelmingly bright and vast that it leaves Arjuna in a state of awe and fear. Likewise, in Islamic traditions, the divine presence is described as nur, light, which is beyond human comprehension. The Quran speaks of Allah as the light of the heavens and the earth, Surah An-Nur 2400 hours 35, reinforcing the idea that his presence is transcendent and ineffable. Overwhelming encounters in mythology and religious texts. Beyond just brightness, encounters with divine or supernatural beings are often portrayed as completely overwhelming, both physically and emotionally. The biblical story of Moses on Mount Sinai exemplifies this concept. When Moses encounters God, the experience is so powerful that his face glows afterward, causing fear among the Israelites, Exodus 34 verses 29 to 30. Similarly, in the book of Revelation, the Apostle John falls to the ground, as though dead, upon witnessing the glorified Christ, Revelation 1 verse 17. In Greek mythology, mortal encounters with gods can be equally overpowering. For example, the story of Semele, the mortal mother of Dionysus, illustrates the dangers of witnessing a god's true form. Zeus, her divine lover, grants her request to see him in his full glory, but the sight is so overwhelming that she is instantly incinerated. This myth underscores the idea that divine beings exist on a level beyond human endurance and comprehension. Similarly, Norse mythology speaks of the overwhelming presence of gods like Odin, whose wisdom and power are described as unfathomable to humans. Encounters with these deities often leave mortals changed, blinded, or in awe, reinforcing the concept that divine knowledge and presence are beyond human grasp. Beyond human comprehension, the ineffability of divine encounters. The notion that divine or supernatural presence is beyond human comprehension is a common theme in religious and mystical traditions. Mystics from various faiths have described their experiences with the divine as indescribable or paradoxical. In Christianity, figures like Saint Teresa of Avila and Saint John of the Cross recount mystical experiences where they felt completely overwhelmed by God's presence, often struggling to put their visions into words. In Islamic Sufism, the concept of fana, annihilation of the self in God, describes an experience where the individual loses their sense of self in the overwhelming presence of the divine. Such descriptions suggest that the human mind is incapable of fully grasping the enormity of the divine reality. Similarly, Buddhist Enlightenment experiences, particularly in Zen traditions, emphasize sudden, overwhelming realizations that defy logical explanation, reinforcing the idea that ultimate truths are beyond rational comprehension. Psychological and scientific perspectives. From a psychological standpoint, descriptions of overwhelming divine presence may be linked to altered states of consciousness. Neuroscientists studying religious experiences have found that moments of intense spiritual revelation often involve heightened brain activity in areas associated with awe, fear, and transcendence. Near-death experiences, for example, frequently include reports of encountering a blinding light and feeling an overwhelming sense of love and peace. These experiences, while deeply personal, share common elements that suggest a neurological basis for the perception of an incomprehensible presence. Additionally, studies in cognitive science suggest that the human brain struggles to process extreme sensory input, which may explain why encounters with divine beings are often described in terms of overwhelming light or ineffability. When faced with an experience that defies ordinary perception, the brain may default to metaphors and symbols to express what cannot be fully articulated. The role of cultural influence. Cultural background also plays a significant role in shaping how people describe encounters with supernatural entities. In cultures where light is associated with knowledge, purity, and divinity, divine beings are often depicted as radiantly bright. Conversely, in traditions where the divine is associated with mystery and the unknown, descriptions may focus more on darkness or the hidden nature of the divine. The variety of descriptions across cultures suggests that while the experience of an overwhelming presence may be a universal phenomenon, the way it is interpreted and expressed is shaped by cultural and religious influences. The description of divine or supernatural presence as blindingly bright, overwhelming, or beyond human comprehension is a theme that transcends cultural and religious boundaries. Whether in ancient religious texts, mythological traditions, mystical experiences, or modern scientific studies, the idea persists that encounters with the divine defy human understanding. This commonality suggests that such experiences tap into something deeply rooted in the human psyche, a recognition of the limits of human perception and the profound mystery of existence. Ultimately, these descriptions serve to emphasize the transcendence and majesty of the divine, reinforcing the idea that some aspects of reality remain forever beyond human comprehension. The cherubim in Ezekiel 15-11a. Detailed analysis. The book of Ezekiel is known for its rich and complex imagery, particularly in its depiction of celestial beings known as the cherubim. In Ezekiel 1 verses 5-11, the prophet describes a vision of 4 living creatures with multiple faces, covered in eyes, and possessing an extraordinary appearance. This passage has captivated theologians, historians, and scholars for centuries, inspiring various interpretations regarding their symbolic significance. The description of the cherubim. Ezekiel 1 verses 5-11 provides one of the most detailed descriptions of angelic beings in the Bible. According to the passage, each cherub had 4 faces, a human face, a lion's face, an ox's face, and an eagle's face. They had 4 wings, with 2 wings used to cover their bodies and 2 used for movement. Their entire bodies, including their backs, hands, and wings, were covered in eyes. They moved in unison without turning as they went, guided by the Spirit. These descriptions are filled with rich symbolism and evoke a sense of divine mystery. The unique characteristics of the cherubim provide profound insights into their role in Ezekiel's vision. The symbolism of the 4 faces. One of the most striking features of the cherubim is their 4 faces, which many scholars interpret as representations of different aspects of creation and divine attributes. Human face. The human face likely symbolizes intelligence, wisdom, and the rational nature of God's creation. Humanity is uniquely made in God's image, Genesis 1 verses 26-27, representing reason and moral discernment. Lion face. The lion, often regarded as the king of the beasts, symbolizes strength, authority, and kingship. In biblical contexts, lions frequently represent power, such as the imagery used for the tribe of Judah, Genesis 49 verse 9, Revelation 5 verse 5. Ox face. The ox represents servitude, strength, and endurance. In ancient Israelite culture, oxen were essential for agriculture, highlighting themes of labor and sacrifice, much like Christ's role as a servant, Mark 10 verse 45. Eagle face. The eagle embodies swiftness, vision, and divine oversight. Eagles are known for their ability to soar high above the earth, symbolizing God's supreme perspective and spiritual insight, Isaiah 40 verse 31. These 4 creatures together may represent the fullness of God's dominion over all creation, humanity, wild animals, domesticated beasts, and birds of the air. The eyes covering the cherubim. Another remarkable characteristic of the cherubim is their bodies being covered with eyes. This imagery suggests omniscience and divine awareness, symbolizing God's all-seeing nature. Eyes often represent wisdom, insight, and vigilance in biblical literature. The covering of eyes across their entire being indicates their complete attentiveness to God's will in the affairs of the world. The movement of the cherubim. Ezekiel describes how the cherubim move without turning, always advancing straight ahead. This unusual mode of movement reflects their divine guidance. Unlike ordinary creatures that must turn to change direction, these celestial beings move in complete unity, guided by the Spirit of God. This suggests perfect obedience and alignment with divine purpose. Parallels in biblical and theological contexts. The imagery of the cherubim in Ezekiel closely resembles other biblical descriptions of celestial beings. Revelation 4 verses 6-8 describes 4 living creatures with similar features, reinforcing the idea that these beings are integral to God's throne and heavenly court. Exodus 25 verses 18-22 mentions cherubim on the Ark of the Covenant, highlighting their role as divine guardians. Isaiah 6 verses 1-3 describes the seraphim, another category of angelic beings, emphasizing the holiness of God. These connections suggest that the cherubim play a crucial role in God's heavenly order, serving as protectors, messengers, and symbols of divine presence. The cherubim of Ezekiel 1 verses 5-11 are among the most enigmatic and awe-inspiring figures in biblical literature. Their 4 faces symbolize different aspects of creation and divine authority, while their covering of eyes represents divine omniscience. Their movement signifies complete submission to God's will, reflecting their purpose as attendants of the divine throne. Understanding the cherubim helps deepen our appreciation of the majesty and mystery of God's kingdom. These beings remind us of the transcendent and multifaceted nature of divine power, inspiring awe and reverence in those who study their depiction in Scripture. The angel of death in Exodus wipes out Egypt's firstborn. The story of the angel of death wiping out Egypt's firstborn is one of the most dramatic and pivotal events in the biblical book of Exodus. It marks the final plague that ultimately leads to the liberation of the Israelites from Egyptian bondage. This event has deep theological, historical, and cultural implications that have been interpreted in various ways across different religious traditions. The context of the plague. The narrative is set within the broader story of the Israelites' enslavement in Egypt. According to Exodus, God chooses Moses as the leader to demand Pharaoh release the Israelites. Pharaoh's repeated refusal results in a series of 10 plagues, each increasing in severity. The 10th and final plague, the death of Egypt's firstborn, is the climax of these divine judgments. Before this final plague, God instructs Moses to warn Pharaoh that if he does not let the Israelites go, all the firstborn in Egypt will die, from the son of Pharaoh to the firstborn of slaves and even animals, Exodus 11 verses 4-6. This catastrophic judgment is meant to demonstrate God's power and to compel Pharaoh to free the Israelites. The role of the angel of death. The angel of death is not explicitly named in Exodus. Instead, the passage states that God himself will pass through Egypt and strike down the firstborn, Exodus 12 verse 12. However, in later Jewish and Christian traditions, the term angel of death is used to describe this divine agent of destruction. The Hebrew Bible uses terms such as the destroyer, Exodus 12 verse 23, to refer to this force of judgment. The angel of death follows divine command, sparing only those households that obey God's specific instructions. This aspect highlights the theme of divine justice and mercy operating simultaneously. The Passover, protection from the plague. To protect themselves from the coming destruction, the Israelites are given detailed instructions to follow, which lay the foundation for the Jewish festival of Passover. Each family is to sacrifice a lamb and apply its blood to the doorposts and lintels of their houses. This blood serves as a sign for the angel of death to pass over their homes, sparing the firstborn inside, Exodus 12 verses 7-13. This act of obedience is crucial in differentiating the Israelites from the Egyptians and ensuring their survival. The Passover meal, which includes unleavened bread and bitter herbs, is also established at this moment, serving as a lasting memorial of their deliverance. The theological implication is clear: those who trust and obey God are spared from judgment, a theme that resonates throughout the Bible. The devastation and Pharaoh's surrender. At midnight, the angel of death carries out God's decree, and every Egyptian firstborn dies, including Pharaoh's own son, Exodus 12 verses 29-30. The grief and terror in Egypt are overwhelming, as there was loud wailing in Egypt, for there was not a house without someone dead, Exodus 12 verse 30. This moment represents the breaking point for Pharaoh, who, in sheer desperation and sorrow, finally concedes to Moses' demand and orders the Israelites to leave immediately, Exodus 12 verses 31-32. This event underscores the ultimate sovereignty of God over human rulers and empires. Pharaoh, who considered himself divine, is rendered powerless before the God of Israel. Theological significance. Theologically, the 10th plague serves multiple purposes. Divine judgment, it acts as retribution against Pharaoh and Egypt for their oppression of the Israelites. The systematic killing of Israelite male infants earlier in Exodus 1 verse 22, finds an ironic reversal in this plague. God's sovereignty, the event demonstrates God's ultimate authority over all nations and rulers. Pharaoh's resistance is crushed in the face of divine power. Salvation and redemption, the sparing of the Israelites foreshadows future biblical themes of salvation. In Christian theology, the Passover lamb is seen as a precursor to Jesus Christ, whose sacrifice provides salvation from sin, 1 Corinthians 5 verse 7. Faith and obedience, the Israelites' obedience in marking their doors with blood underscores the necessity of faith in divine instruction for protection and deliverance. Historical and cultural interpretations. Scholars and theologians have debated the historicity of this event. Some view it as a literal historical event, while others see it as a theological narrative designed to convey deeper truths about divine justice and liberation. Archaeological evidence for the 10 plagues is debated, though some scholars suggest possible natural explanations, such as disease outbreaks or environmental disasters. In Jewish tradition, the story is foundational to the celebration of Passover, emphasizing themes of freedom, divine intervention, and covenant identity. In Christian thought, it is often linked to the sacrifice of Jesus as the Lamb of God. The angel of death's role in wiping out Egypt's firstborn is one of the most dramatic moments in the Bible. It serves as a powerful demonstration of divine justice and deliverance, marking the turning point in the Israelites' journey to freedom. This event continues to hold profound religious significance, shaping Jewish and Christian beliefs about God's power, salvation, and the importance of faith and obedience. They act as messengers or soldiers of God. Divine messengers and soldiers are commonly depicted in religious texts as supernatural beings created by God to carry out specific tasks. They are portrayed as pure, immortal, and possessing knowledge and power beyond human comprehension. Unlike human beings, they do not possess free will in the way that mortals do. Their very existence is dedicated to fulfilling divine decrees. In Christianity, for example, angels are described as ministering spirits sent to serve those who inherit salvation, Hebrews 1 verse 14. They are intermediaries between God and humanity, relaying divine messages, offering protection, and executing judgment. Similarly, in Islam, angels, malaika, are believed to be created from light and have no choice but to obey the commands of Allah. The role of divine warriors is also prominent in religious traditions. The archangel Michael, for instance, is often depicted as a warrior leading heavenly armies against forces of evil. In Revelation 12 verses 7-9, Michael and his angels wage war against the dragon, Satan, showcasing the celestial battle between good and evil. This idea of divine warfare is echoed in various mythologies and spiritual traditions, where supernatural beings are charged with defending the divine order. Missions that transcend human reasoning. One of the most striking aspects of these messengers and soldiers is their unwavering commitment to their divine mission. Unlike humans, who can be swayed by emotions, doubts, and personal interests, these celestial beings operate solely within the will of God. Their actions are dictated by divine law rather than human logic, making their missions unchangeable. 1. Delivering messages without alteration. The role of angels as divine messengers is a recurring theme in many religious texts. In the Bible, the angel Gabriel is one of the most well-known messengers, delivering crucial revelations. He appeared to Mary to announce the birth of Jesus, Luke 1 verses 26-38, and to Zechariah to foretell the birth of John the Baptist. In Islam, Gabriel, Jibril, is also the angel responsible for revealing the Quran to the Prophet Muhammad over a period of 23 years. These messages, often carrying profound theological and moral implications, are delivered without modification or personal interpretation. Unlike human envoys who may distort information due to bias, fear, or misunderstanding, divine messengers deliver their messages with absolute fidelity to God's command. Their role is not to debate or question but to communicate exactly what they have been assigned. 2. Executing judgment and divine wrath. Divine warriors and messengers are also tasked with executing divine judgment. In the Bible, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Genesis 19, is an example of angels carrying out divine retribution. The angels sent by God warned Lot of the impending destruction and later carried out the judgment upon the cities. Similarly, in the book of Exodus, the angel of death struck down the firstborn of Egypt during the final plague, demonstrating how divine agents execute God's will without hesitation or personal bias. In Islamic tradition, the angel Israfil is believed to blow the trumpet to announce the day of judgment, while Azrael, the angel of death, is responsible for taking the souls of the deceased. These figures act solely under divine command, unaffected by human appeals or reasoning. 3. Engaging in spiritual warfare. The concept of spiritual warfare is central to many religious beliefs, with divine warriors engaged in battles that transcend human understanding. The struggle between good and evil, light and darkness, is often depicted as a cosmic battle where angels or celestial beings fight against demonic forces. In Christian theology, the battle between Michael and Satan, as mentioned in Revelation, highlights the unwavering resolve of divine warriors. They fight not for personal glory but to uphold divine justice and order. Similarly, in Islamic eschatology, angels play a role in battling the forces of Dajjal, the Antichrist, in the end times, reinforcing the idea of divine soldiers who remain resolute in their mission. Why they cannot be swayed by human reasoning. The inability of divine messengers and warriors to be influenced by human reasoning stems from their nature and purpose. Unlike humans, who possess free will and are subject to emotions, logic, and ethical dilemmas, these beings are bound by divine command. Absolute obedience to divine will. Angels and divine warriors exist to serve God. Their loyalty and obedience are absolute, ensuring that their actions align solely with divine decrees. They do not entertain personal opinions, doubts, or moral dilemmas. Their very essence is designed to execute God's will flawlessly. Beyond human emotion and moral dilemmas. Humans often struggle with ethical decisions, questioning the morality of actions based on personal experiences, societal norms, and emotions. However, divine messengers and warriors do not experience such conflicts. They act with pure intent, executing justice or mercy as dictated by God without hesitation. Operating outside time and human limitations. Many religious traditions describe divine beings as existing beyond the constraints of time and space. Unlike humans, who are bound by past experiences and uncertainties about the future, these beings act with full knowledge of divine wisdom. Their decisions are not based on limited human perspectives but on divine omniscience. Immunity to corruption and temptation. While humans can be influenced by power, greed, or personal gain, divine messengers and soldiers remain incorruptible. Their nature does not allow for deviation from their mission. Even when confronted with human pleas or arguments, they do not waver from their purpose. The human response to divine messengers and soldiers. The interactions between humans and these divine beings often lead to awe, fear, or confusion. Many religious texts describe humans as overwhelmed when encountering angels or divine warriors. The sheer presence of these beings, their authority, and their unyielding nature serve as reminders of the supremacy of divine will. Fear and reverence. In biblical accounts, individuals often fall to their knees in fear when confronted by angels. For example, when the angel appeared to Daniel, he was terrified and fell to the ground, Daniel 10 verse 9. This reaction underscores the immense power and divine nature of these messengers. Resistance and denial. Despite their divine authority, some individuals resist or question their messages. The people of Sodom ignored the warnings of the angels, leading to their destruction. Similarly, in various religious narratives, prophets are met with skepticism despite divine revelations being delivered through messengers. Acceptance and submission. Those who recognize the authority of divine messengers often respond with submission and faith. Mary's acceptance of Gabriel's message exemplifies complete trust in God's plan. The same is seen in the Islamic tradition, where the Prophet Muhammad unconditionally accepted the revelations given by Jibril. Seeing an angel's true form, a mind-shattering experience. Across various religious and mythological traditions, angels are depicted as beings of immense power, wisdom, and radiance. However, some traditions suggest that witnessing an angel's true form would obliterate a human mind due to their incomprehensible nature. This idea emerges from theological concepts, historical narratives, and the sheer disparity between human perception and divine reality. To understand this, we must explore biblical accounts, theological perspectives, philosophical implications, and psychological interpretations of such an overwhelming experience. Biblical and religious accounts. One of the most well-known sources of this belief is the Bible, particularly in the Old Testament and apocalyptic literature. In numerous passages, angels appear before humans, but often in forms that are tempered for human understanding. When they do reveal their true nature, the reaction is almost always fear and awe. For example, in Isaiah 6 verses 1-4, the prophet Isaiah describes a vision of seraphim, celestial beings with 6 wings, 2 covering their faces, 2 covering their feet, and 2 for flying. The mere presence of these beings causes the very foundations of the temple to shake. Isaiah is immediately overcome with dread, exclaiming, "Woe is me! For I am undone." This suggests that seeing such a divine being is not merely astonishing but fundamentally overwhelming. Similarly, in the New Testament, when angels appear, their first words are often, "Do not be afraid," Luke 1 verse 13, Luke 2 verse 10. This implies that the natural human reaction to witnessing an angel is terror. The Book of Revelation, 2, describes angels in bizarre, surreal forms, some with multiple faces, eyes covering their bodies, or a presence so radiant that it is difficult to behold. Such descriptions reinforce the idea that angels exist on a plane far beyond human comprehension. Theological perspectives on human comprehension. Many religious traditions argue that humans exist in a limited state of perception. The concept of an infinite, divine being appearing before a finite, mortal mind suggests a fundamental incompatibility between the two. Some theological interpretations propose that our sensory and cognitive faculties are insufficient to process divine reality fully. The idea that divine beings must conceal their full glory to communicate with humans is evident in stories of God veiling his presence. For instance, in Exodus 33 verse 20, God tells Moses, "You cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live." This suggests that encountering unfiltered divinity is inherently destructive to mortal beings. Angels, as messengers of God, are believed to reflect a fraction of this overwhelming divine presence. In Islamic theology, there are also traditions that suggest angelic beings are composed of pure light, existing beyond human sensory experience. The idea that they must take on a more comprehensible form when communicating with mortals aligns with the broader concept that their true essence is beyond our cognitive reach. Philosophical and metaphysical considerations. Philosophers and metaphysicians have long discussed the limitations of human perception. Thinkers such as Immanuel Kant proposed that human cognition is limited by categories of understanding. We perceive reality in structured ways due to the constraints of our minds. If an angel's true form exists beyond these categories, then seeing one would not only be confusing but potentially mind-shattering. This aligns with the idea of the sublime, a concept explored in aesthetics and philosophy. The sublime refers to experiences that transcend human comprehension, often evoking a mixture of awe and terror. The sheer otherness of angelic forms, beings that are neither wholly material nor subject to human sensory limitations, suggests an encounter that could overwhelm the mind, much like staring into the infinite vastness of the cosmos. In more speculative discussions, some have even suggested that angelic perception operates on dimensions beyond human experience. If angels exist in higher spatial or metaphysical dimensions, their true forms may be impossible for our three-dimensional minds to process without inducing madness or annihilation of thought. Psychological interpretations of overwhelming experiences. From a psychological perspective, encountering something utterly beyond human understanding can have profound effects on the mind. People who have undergone near-death experiences or religious visions often report overwhelming sensations of light, presence, or even indescribable knowledge that defies articulation. Some describe these encounters as euphoric, while others find them terrifying. Psychologists studying extreme cognitive dissonance suggest that when the brain is faced with an experience it cannot categorize, it either shuts down, distorts the experience into something familiar, or experiences extreme fear and distress. This aligns with the idea that seeing an angel's true form could be too much for the brain to handle, leading to either psychological breakdown or complete mental obliteration. Historical cases of people claiming to see divine beings often report visions of light, abstract patterns, or shapes that defy normal perception. Some scholars speculate that such experiences could be linked to altered states of consciousness, whether induced by meditation, fasting, or extreme emotional states. In some cases, these experiences are so intense that they lead to a permanent change in perception or even temporary insanity. Cultural depictions and the fear of the unknown. The concept of incomprehensible celestial beings has influenced literature, art, and modern media. The Lovecraftian horror genre, for example, often explores themes of cosmic entities whose mere presence drives humans to madness. Though Lovecraft's works are rooted in atheistic horror, the underlying idea, beings so vast and beyond human understanding that the mind collapses in their presence, mirrors the religious notion of angels as beyond mortal comprehension. In visual art, depictions of angels in religious iconography often portray them as human-like figures, but medieval and Renaissance artists sometimes depicted them with unnatural features, multiple wings, glowing eyes, and wheels of fire, drawing from biblical descriptions. Modern depictions, especially in speculative fiction, have leaned into the idea that angels may be more alien and terrifying than traditionally portrayed. A divine encounter beyond understanding. The idea that seeing an angel's true form would obliterate a human mind stems from multiple factors: biblical descriptions of overwhelming divine encounters, theological arguments about the limitations of human perception, philosophical discussions of incomprehensibility, and psychological effects of extreme cognitive dissonance. So, next time you hear about angels, remember, there's more to them than just serene messengers of light. They're ancient, awe-inspiring beings that embody both beauty and terror. Whether as symbols of divine power or as agents of chaos, their true nature is far darker than we ever imagined. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the terrifying truth behind angels, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more videos exploring the mysterious side of history and mythology. Until next time, stay curious and stay cautious.